Dr. Moore, thank you for that very kind introduction. It brought tears to my eyes and warmth to my heart. I truly appreciated that. Members and guests, it has been a great honor for me to serve as your president during this past year. The American Surgical Association is the most prestigious academic association in North America, and hence is the pinnacle of my career. Two mentors of mine, Dr. Hiram Polk and Dr. Jay Grossfeld, had advised me periodically, when one takes on a position such as this in an organization such as ours, that one should make every effort to leave the organization better than one started. I can assure you that every single council member that I have worked with, either as secretary, president-elect, or president, past officers, current officers, past and current committee chair people, have done that over and over again. They have made lasting contributions to this organization, and it's been such a pleasure to work with you all. Obviously, you don't get to these positions without great help from many people, and it all begins with family. And Jean Moore eloquently described our family in many ways. I think most importantly is the support and love that I've had from my wife, Mary Pat, over the 40 years of marriage. It's been an incredible journey, and there is no way that I would be standing here today if it wasn't for her support, love, and tolerance of my pursuit for excellence in the surgical field. Also, I would like to acknowledge our children, sons, John and Eric. They have enriched our lives in many, many ways. And today and recently have married fabulous women that now we can call daughters, Hillary and Molly. Thank you for being here. Certainly, it all begins with your parents, and I owe my parents much. They gave me love and guidance through life. We laughed with the good, and we had plenty of good times. And we cried with the bad, and there were some of those. I certainly miss them, and I wish that they were here today. I also realize that you do not rise to positions such as this without a faculty which is excellent in all regards. The Ohio State University College of Medicine Department of Surgery faculty is diverse and talented in many ways. I have always said that great places are made by great programs, great places, and great people. Most importantly, great people. And I think as leaders in surgery, we can never forget the contributions that our individual faculty members make to our organizations and to the future of surgery. Thank you, Ohio State faculty. I'm grateful for all of those that are here. Dr. Moore referred to the Zollinger-Ellison dyad that began in 1954 with the sentinel observation of a patient with gastronoma. This is the index operation being done by the professor and his protege, provided to me by Dr. Stuart Wilson, who was my advisor in medical school. The Zollinger-Ellison connection went on and on for years, and my circle of mentors is very tight in that regard. My dad left Columbus in 1957 and went to the Marquette University, which is now the Medical College of Wisconsin. And while he was there, he worked with Larry Carey, an Ohio native, an alumnus of the Ohio State University Undergraduate School and College of Medicine. And I was able to work in Dr. Carey's lab when I was in high school, as Dr. Moore had indicated. These three men have become pivotal in my entire career and life. Each of them has made major contributions to my professional life and my personal life. My dad taught me to treat all with respect and dignity and to be humble. Dr. Zollinger taught me to pay attention to detail in patient care, professional responsibility, and the art of critical observation. Dr. Carey taught me how to operate. And by that I mean be a technical surgeon and efficient. He also taught me how to take care of patients. And importantly, he taught me how to fly fish, which is a passion of mine. And Larry, I think I could use some more lessons, so thank you for being here today. I do have a few acknowledgments to give, and I think there are many, many people that I would like to thank, but the people that I'm going to recognize are people that consistently stand out as being incredibly important in my life. First, Dr. Robert Condon and Dr. Stuart Wilson, the residents that I trained with. Dr. L.D. Britt, Dr. Joseph Fisher, Dr. Jay Grossfeld, we miss him deeply. Roger Keith, Frank Lewis on the board, what an experience. Mark Malangoni, Hiram Polk, a great friend from the great state of Kentucky, Jeff Ponsky, David Richardson, and of course Bing Rickers, and then my good friend Tom Williams. They have made incredible impact on me. There are many other people as well, but those are the ones that really stand out. The address that I'm about to deliver to you was prepared on my father's desk. We received a note from Mary Otterson, who's a professor of surgery at the Medical College of Wisconsin in November of 2017, indicating that it was time to send the desk back to the Ellison family. It arrived in the spring of 2018, just in time for me to begin preparation for this address. As you can see, it was beautiful, in beautiful condition and fit very nicely into our small study area. Mary said that the desk provided her with great strength and wisdom, and I can attest to that fact over the past year. I would like to thank Mary and the Medical College of Wisconsin for their care of the desk over the years and for returning it home. I'm grateful. 50 years ago, Dr. Owen Wagenstein addressed this organization. In his presidential address, he stated that the annual address is a lectureship on the status, outlook, and vistas of surgery. He also indicated in that address that surgeons, particularly those in this organization, should assume responsible leadership for matters affecting surgery and surgeons. And I will not stray far from my responsibility. There are many topics that one could talk about during a presidential address. Today, I am going to talk about time and change and the importance of innovation and leadership to the future of surgery. Just like we cannot escape history, as in Dr. Wagenstein's presidential address title, we cannot escape the impact of time and change. But we can impact what it does. And we can do that by innovation. Innovation is critically important for the advancement of surgical science, education, and clinical care. We saw that demonstrated this morning over and over and over again in people that were recognized by our association. They are all world-class innovators, and particularly having Dr. Fogarty receive the award, the clinical award is even more impressive. But innovation will not succeed without leadership. Innovation requires that leaders create an environment that is conducive to creative thinking and discovery. It is critically important for us as an association to help prepare the future leaders of American surgery, leaders that are capable of leading departments, divisions, hospitals, medical complexes, and medical schools. During my presentation, I will briefly talk about the Ohio State as a land-grant university from a historical perspective, but also in the context that the land-grant initiative in and of itself was an innovation that required tremendous leadership in order to make it successful. We will look at what innovation looks like today, very different than it looked like when our organization was founded. It's much more complex. And I think that we'll take a little look in terms of what it looks like today through examples of innovation occurring at our own institution. And then we will talk about leadership and the leadership that's necessary to sustain innovation in the future, because without leadership, innovation will not succeed. And then the possible role of our association in helping in that regard. The Ohio State University was founded as a land-grant university in 1870. It's one of the early land-grant institutions. The land-grant initiative was originally defined as providing accessible, high-quality, and affordable education, originally focused on the industrial class. The land-grant concept was introduced by Justin Smith Morrill to Congress in 1862, and it passed Congress after deliberations and was signed into law by Abraham Lincoln in the midst of the Civil War, July 2nd, 1862. The act provided for grants of land to each of the eligible states. Each state received 30,000 acres per representative to Congress, either Senate and House of Representatives, per state. This generated roughly 17.4 million acres. That's twice the size of the state of Ohio. That generated $7.5 million as an initial endowment, about $187 million in today's world. And with that endowment, with the leadership of national leaders, state leaders, and university leaders, 56 land-grant institutions were established. So I need to ask the audience, how many of you went to a land-grant university, have worked at a land-grant university, or are currently working at a land-grant university? I think you can see the impact of the land-grant innovation on higher education in the United States. The initial pillars of the land-grant institutions is a focus on education, and it was the focus on agriculture, the mechanical arts, and military tactics. However, there was a stipulation buried deep in the original article, and that was it should not exclude other scientific and classical studies. Obviously, medicine was not part of the initial description, but that would come later after the Flexner Report in 1910. So the Ohio State University was founded as the Ohio Agricultural and Mechanical College in 1870, and its original campus was just north of Columbus in a farming community where it sits today. Subsequent acts made and strengthened the Morrill Act. First, in 1890, the Morrill Act of that year specified that states with a land-grant institution could not use race as a criterion for admission, and further stipulated that if states could not meet that requirement, that they would need to establish a second land-grant institution established solely for the education of colored people or blacks in our country. Hence, this initiative started 19 additional land-grant universities, which now have been part of the historical all-black universities in our country. The missions of the land-grant institutions were expanded by 2 additional acts, the Hatch Act of 1887 and the Smith-Lever Act of 1914, so that today the 3 missions of a land-grant institution are teaching, research, and service. As I indicated, medicine was really not part of the land grants initially. However, after the Flexner Report in 1910, it became a pillar as well of these educational universities. Wexner visited Columbus, Ohio in 1909 and inspected our medical school at the time. He also visited all 155 medical schools in North America in preparation of his report. Upon his visiting the Starling, Ohio Medical University and St. Francis Hospital in Columbus, he had several observations. First, he thought that the medical school was a Division II school because it only required a high school education for admission and not a college education as Division I schools require. Secondly, he noted that the laboratories were actually pretty good, and he felt that with vigorous measures that the school might be turned into a reasonable medical educational program. And thirdly, he pointed out that the state of Ohio had a duty and an obligation for public health and for medical education to advance medical school training programs, and thought that the task might be relatively simple because the flagship university of the state of Ohio existed less than 5 miles away. And hence he foreshadowed the merger of the then Starling, Ohio Medical University with the Ohio State University College of Medicine. The medical school at Ohio State opened in 1914 and used that original building for classes and for teaching. And then in 1917 began construction on a new university hospital, and eventually, when it was all said and done, had about 300 beds, labs, and maternity wards. Additionally, Hamilton Hall, which was the first new medical school and school of dentistry at Ohio State, was completed in 1923, and now we had a medical campus on the Ohio State University campus. The first chair of surgery was William J. Means, and this is a photograph of him in his Means Clinic in 1914. Additional chairs of surgery included Vern Dodd, Charles Summer Hamilton, and then George M. Curtis was the chair of the Department of Surgical Research and was a member and the first member from Ohio State of this association. Everything changed in 1947 when the dean recruited Dr. Robert M. Zollinger from Boston to be the chair of surgery. Dr. Zollinger was an Ohio native. He grew up in a farming community, Millersport, Ohio, not 30 miles from Columbus. He was a graduate of the land-grant institution, the Ohio State University, not only for undergrad, but also for medical school. And he was highly sought after as a surgical trainee and eventually landed a position with Elliott Cutler at the Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston, where he completed his training, was on the faculty for a few years, and then served in the military after that period of time, and was a senior consultant to the French Theater of Operations for medical management. As we indicated, he and Dr. Carey had worked together when Dr. Carey was a medical student. Dr. Carey was a later chair and went on to develop a lot of new programs in the department. In addition, I think it deserving indication of the greatness and forward thinking of Ohio State at the time was the appointment of Dr. Olga Jonassen as chair in 1987 as the first woman chair of an academic department of surgery in the United States. She later became the first woman officer of this association as vice president in 1996 through 1997. Dr. Jonassen had a tremendous impact on my career, and I'm grateful that I had an opportunity to work with her. Ohio State's changed a lot since 1914. In the last 100 years, the medical school has expanded greatly. We currently have a graduating class of about 200 students per year, of whom 50% are women and 25% are underrepresented in medicine. The faculty has grown dramatically. We currently have over 1,900 faculty, and 1,700 of them have clinical responsibilities. The faculty is responsible for teaching 800 medical students per year and 800 residents and fellows per year as well. The faculty generates over $100 million of NIH funding on an annual basis and oversees over 2,000 research projects in our College of Medicine. The medical center has also grown dramatically from that initial 300 beds to over 1,500 beds. In addition, we have 600,000 square feet of laboratory space. Last year, we did 45,000 surgical procedures, had 130,000 emergency room visits, and had 45,000 admissions to the hospital. The land grant story that took place in Columbus, Ohio, relative to medicine has been repeated many times across our country. Of the 56 original land grant institutions, 28 have medical schools, and they have created 38 allopathic medical schools. So approximately 1/4 of the medical schools in the United States reside in land grant institutions and owe their inception to the innovative concept presented by Justin Morrill and Abraham Lincoln in 1862. These land grant institutions train 1/4 of the medical students in the United States. By my count, there are over 200 members of this association whose roots come from a land grant institution. And including me, there have been 12 presidents of this association from land grants. So what does the land grant story have to do with innovation and leadership? Well, I think it's pretty obvious. The land grant initiative in and of itself was a tremendous social innovation. It transformed higher education in the United States. I'm not sure what it would be like without the land grants. Also, that initiative could not have any way been possible without leadership that was committed to the missions spelled out in the Morrill Act. Dedicated leadership at the national level, state level, the university level. And just as that leadership was needed to promote the land grant innovations, so will surgical leadership be to promote the innovations necessary to advance our profession and the care of our patients. Innovation is critically important to the advancement of surgical science, education, and patient care. We all know that it's becoming increasingly difficult today to create an environment to support innovation. Innovation is valued by our organization. It is specified in our mission statement that was initially written by Dr. L.D. Britt in 2013. Many of our members have made innovative discoveries, some of which we've talked about today. Several have won Nobel Awards. 30 have received the Medallion of Scientific Achievement, 24 the Flance Carl Award, and 8 have received the Advancement of Surgical Care Award. We value innovation. It has been a part of our organization since its inception, and it has been the topic of 8 presidential addresses since 1950. We all know the impact of innovation. We see it every day in our patient care and our outcomes, whether it's open surgery, minimally invasive surgery, robotic surgery, cancer surgery, trauma care. The steps that we have taken to improve patient care in our country has been amazing. And I think that we are all grateful for the opportunity to have been able to help in that regard. What does innovation look like today? What does innovation look like in your medical campus, in your health system, in your medical school? I was curious to know if innovation centers had been developed throughout the United States. I was aware of several, and I was amazed to find that since 2000, there have been the creation of 76 health innovation centers across the United States. Many of these are in large cities. They're distributed pretty uniformly in the Midwest and some of the other parts of our country. There's one citywide consortia in the hub in Boston. There are 52 institutional health innovation centers, some with medical schools, some specialty, some studios and labs. People are recognizing that innovators today need to be trained. They need to be prepared. It's very different than when we began our careers years ago in terms of discovery and research. You need multidisciplinary teams. You need to work with engineers. You need to work with biostatisticians. You need to work with computer scientists. You need to work with computational biologists. You need to have people that can help you protect your intellectual property. You need to have people that can help you go through the legal system. You need to have people that can help create a spin-off company if that is what's needed. The innovation centers allow those to take place. Innovation can also be classified as incremental. That's improving what you do a little bit at a time. Breakthrough, where you're taking an issue or a treatment and making it better. And then transformative, where you're really making a new way of doing things. Obviously, the more complex the innovation, the longer it is going to take. I was interested in bringing to you several examples of innovation. And, I could have gone to our MIS area or our robotics area or our surgical oncology group and come up with a variety of different new innovative things. But I decided to go on a tour of Ohio State. And so I literally walked through the institution, not knowing what I was going to find to bring to you today in terms of innovation. The first thing I found was in the lobby of the James Cancer Hospital about 6 months ago. I was walking through the lobby and I saw the structure. I had never seen it before. It was called the Innovation Studio, and it is sponsored by the Ohio State University College of Nursing. And I looked in, and there was a hustle and bustle of people all doing different kind of things, 3D printers, laser cutters, vinyl cutters, there were engineers, prototype makers. I had no idea what is this all about? And then I went back 2 weeks later, and it was gone. And I learned that this is actually a movable makerspace. It moves around the campus to engage people while they are working. Engage the nurses, the doctors, the respiratory therapists. It's the whole medical team that gets engaged. It's not just the physicians. And actually, I was so impressed with this. I said, this is where an innovative culture actually begins. And I said, where did it go? And then I found out that it was in the College of Medicine lobby. So I went over to the College of Medicine and I met with the director, and he allowed me to share with you a video that will actually explain this whole concept of the Innovation Studio.
The Innovation Studio is an interprofessional makerspace. And what we mean by that is it's a place for people from across campus to come together to work on ideas that improve the health and well-being of the world. When we founded the Innovation Studio, we wanted to ensure that the barriers to entry were minimal. In order to do this, we've created 3 simple criteria for teams to be eligible for funding and support from the Innovation Studio. So as long as they're students, faculty, and staff from different professional backgrounds, and the faculty and staff members follow intellectual property policy, then we guarantee we will fund them on our pitch days. Inside the Innovation Studio, you're going to find a wide array of prototyping materials, from 3D printers to laser cutters to vinyl cutters. You'll also see a bunch of computing hardware that can help people get any type of physical prototype off the ground.
One of my specialties is physical product development. So when somebody comes into the studio with a physical product, I can help them take their idea from concept to reality with things like 3D printing and other means of manufacturing.
And if you're someone who has an idea for a service or solution and don't want to develop a physical prototype, the Innovation Studio is absolutely still available to provide you the services and resources you need to be successful.
I was able to work with the staff and the equipment in the Innovation Studio to develop a prototype, which I was able to show to a local company that is interested in taking the product to production.
So the Innovation Studio has provided me with the funding needed to publish a children's book titled In Your Tummy. So the book attenuates the importance of the microbiome and encourages children to eat more fruits and vegetables.
We believe that it's the clinician who should be making the decision about the changes that need to occur in healthcare. The Innovation Studio is the place for these clinicians to come to and connect, create, and collaborate on the ideas and innovations that will impact the health and well-being of the world.
So I think you can see the energy that this little program has actually developed. And since inception, they've had reviewed 150 innovation submissions over a year and a half or so. This is 150 new ideas that never would have been tapped into unless this Innovation Studio was there. And they've given funding to 82 different teams. And the funding is not a lot in terms of the research dollar world, $100,000, but that's not the point. What they gave them was the permission to innovate. They gave them the ideas that their technology was actually worthwhile exploring, and it enhanced the engagement of the staff, and it began to create a culture of innovation within the organization like I have never seen before at Ohio State. I went on my walk, continuing to look for another program that might be a demonstration of breakthrough innovation. And I went into our Heart and Vascular Center, and I was aware that the cardiologists and cardiac surgeons were working with bioengineers in terms of the TAVR innovation, or the transcutaneous aortic valve replacement, trying to make it a better operation. The TAVR innovation is great. I mean, you can replace the aortic valve by doing a transcutaneous insertion of a valve prosthetic and avoid open heart surgery. But it's not perfect, and it can be associated with complications such as perivalvular leak or thromboembolic disease, or even myocardial infarction. So our team of physicians, cardiologists, and cardiac surgeons got together with our engineers and said, can we do this better? Because we don't know if the valve is actually going to work before we put it in. They have given me permission to share with you a short video. It's about 3 minutes of them developing this idea.
Let's take a look at how our team approach has addressed one of these valve problems called aortic stenosis. Aortic stenosis is a condition where one of the valves inside the heart becomes very stiff, and this creates a tremendous amount of pressure on the valve as it tries to distribute blood and oxygen to the brain, to the lungs, and to the kidneys. Left untreated, aortic stenosis can result in heart failure, And when aortic stenosis is severe, most patients survive less than 2 years. It's important to realize that until about a decade ago, there was only one therapy for aortic stenosis, and that was open heart surgery. More recently, a new procedure called TAVR, or TAVR, standing for transcatheter aortic valve replacement, has emerged. This procedure allows us to replace the aortic valve through a small incision in the leg without the need for open heart surgery. And while this therapy was transformational, it was also imperfect. Sometimes the valves would be so large that they could lead to a heart attack. In other situations, the valve wouldn't fit precisely, and you would be left with leaking around the new valve. You can imagine that a leaky valve is not good. Because we are able to collaborate with the School of Engineering, at Ohio State, we're able to consider the all-important question, wouldn't it be great to know if the valve is going to work before the procedure?
That question, wouldn't it be great to know how the valve would work in the patient before the procedure? So we brought the science of biomedical engineering to the art of medicine, specifically to help improve treating valve diseases in these patients. We sat in on team meetings, and it became very obvious that we needed to develop new engineering tools from scratch to help personalize TAVR. Some of the tools are physical models, while some are digital models where we could run simulations using computers. We needed these models to be both transparent and flexible so that we could precisely study the blood flow through these patients' anatomies. And we used that knowledge to study the interaction of these devices in these patients so that we could personalize the therapy. So we focused on developing engineering solutions to not only help select patients, but also help reduce complications such as heart attacks and strokes, as well as help predict success in patients.
As an engineering PhD student, it was a pleasure to work shoulder to shoulder with clinicians in this team approach. I had a critical role in developing how the valve would be modeled. Here's how the process works to fit a personalized TAVR valve model to a patient. First, we export a 3D digital model of the valve to a 3D printer. Next, we load the 3D printed model into an experimental setup that is simply a heart simulator that is used to recreate the conditions of the patient. Then we use two techniques to simulate the blood flow in order to predict the likelihood of blood clot forming on the prosthetic valve. Then we test to see whether the leaflets block the coronary arteries, which may lead to a heart attack if they did. With these tests, we can both properly fit and position the TAVR valve for the specific patient.
So the combination, the multidisciplinary team between cardiology, cardiac surgery, and engineering really created a tailored TAVR procedure and will revolutionize the way this procedure is done at Ohio State and hopefully other institutions. This is a breakthrough innovation. So finally, I needed to find a transformative innovation. And I met with a couple of different people, interviewed them, and my journey took me to Nationwide Children's Hospital, which is a freestanding children's hospital in Columbus, Ohio. And I met with Chris Brewer, who's here today. Dr. Brewer was recipient of the ASA Foundation Fellowship Award in 2005 through 2007, and he was investigating at that time tissue-engineered venous conduits. Dr. Brewer's group has been very interested in congenital heart anomalies. So congenital heart anomalies still are a major cause of death in the newborn period. This is an example of a repair that's used for single ventricle congenital heart defect. And the principles of the repair that I just want you to focus on are the graft from the superior vena cava to the pulmonary artery, and then the graft using the synthetic vascular conduit from the inferior vena cava to the right pulmonary artery. These babies are small, and these grafts are made for adults, and the grafts do not grow. And as such, they create problems when you insert a large graft into a small baby. The graft may get kinked, there may be flow problems, there may be thromboembolic problems. There are other complications related to the graft. Dr. Brewer's group sought to come up with a model for a tissue-engineered vascular graft. So in this cartoon, you can see the biodegradable scaffolding which is used to implant the patient's own bone marrow cells. So the biodegradable scaffolding has spaces within it to allow both extracellular fluid development as well as cellular implantation within the biodegradable scaffolding. So after the bone marrow is mixed with it, it is then implanted into the patient, allowing the blood flow to intermix with the pluripotential cells from the bone marrow. As the scaffolding dissolves, it then creates growth factors that eventually allow the endothelium from the native blood vessel to which it's attached to grow. And those cells grow over time and eventually replace the entire biodegradable scaffolding so that you end up with a complete new blood vessel with all normal physiologic function as well as the potential for growth, which is critically important when you're dealing with a newborn with this type of congenital anomaly. Dr. Brewer's group was the first to do a human trial, initially in Japan, with 25 patients. With a follow-up of 5.8 years, they found no acute graft complications and rare graft stenosis. They also found that the graft actually grows. So let me focus your attention on the yellow graft, which is the native SVC graft to the pulmonary artery, and then the red graft, which is the endovascular graft. So both over a 3-year period, both of these grafts grow. The SVC graft by about 7% and the engineered graft about 6.5%. So the tissue engineered graft actually grows so that you can implant it at the proper time into the baby. The graft will grow with the baby as they grow, and you don't have to have the revisions or the complications associated with the synthetic graft. When they started the US trial, they were surprised that they saw this. Initially, a stenosis developing at about 6 to 8 weeks after implantation in that endovascular graft. This was not observed in the Japanese study. The patients were treated successfully with the balloon angioplasty, and you can see the result here. But the FDA, working with the investigators, said we need to put this project on hold until we understand what is going on in the graft itself. So Dr. Brewer got his team together, and we went back to the bench. And this time, when they went back to the bench, they engaged computational biologists who determined that there was a mathematical formula that you could apply to neovascular remodeling and a vascular formation. And this model actually predicted that at 6 weeks there would be a stenosis, and it was reversible without angioplasty or any treatment. Well, this is, a mathematical model. The next step, as Dr. Brewer explained to me, was to go to in silico. That was a new word for me. In vivo, in vitro, I know. This is in silico. So you're doing multiple computational simulations in computer-based technology. And they demonstrated that, indeed, there was a reversible stenosis. So their data showed that usually about 6 weeks after the procedure, you'd see a stenosis. And then if you wait without doing the angioplasty, it would resolve. They thought it was due to the normal remodeling process that took place in a neo vessel. However, that's in silico. We need to know something in vivo. So Dr. Brewer, having had an ASA Foundation Award, had an established ovine model to test these grafts. So he went back to the laboratory and tested the implantation of a tissue-engineered graft into the inferior vena cava in the ovine model. This shows the relevant anatomy. There's the spine, there's the diaphragm, and there's the inferior vena cava. And then you can see where the graft would be placed at that point. Now, the next slide is going to have 4 little videos on it that will show this graph right at that point at different time periods, 6 weeks, 6 months, and 1 year. And 1 week, sorry. So here 1 week, you can see the graph is intact with no evidence of stenosis. The model would predict that at 6 weeks there would be a stenosis. And in vivo, they found a stenosis at 6 weeks. They didn't do anything with this. They allowed the animals to go on their way. They were not, generally not symptomatic. And then at 6 months, the stenosis had resolved. And at 1 year, the stenosis was totally gone. So what they concluded was that what they were seeing in their model and in their treatment was actually a normal process of remodeling of the neo-vessel within the ovine model and also within the patients. The group now is working to reopen the study with the FDA and is also using the same technology to advance our knowledge of tissue-engineered valves for children with congenital heart disease. So I had an amazing journey walking through Ohio State looking, where's the innovation that's not in my area because I didn't know. And I would offer you the same opportunity in your own institutions. Go to some different sites and see what people are doing. It's incredibly eye-opening. But I think we all know that the impact of time and change is changing the way we can do innovation. It's becoming much more difficult today. We have less time to invest, less money to invest in time for research, education, and creative opportunities. This is where leadership is critically important. Leaders that can prioritize, promote, identify talent, give them the opportunity to work in multidisciplinary teams, and create the future of surgery and medicine. Many of our institutions are under financial constraints, particularly for professional compensation. And the issue of the benchmark RVU is commonplace in academic surgery and medicine today. This is a necessary requirement of our systems in order to help pay for physicians' clinical compensation. But it also runs the risk of disenfranchising the faculty, destroying the esprit de corps of your multidisciplinary teams, and decreasing creativity and innovation. So it requires very special people that can see the importance and the value of discovery to promote and develop techniques and methods to support those initiatives in an organization. To me, I think the solution to the problem of how do we maintain and sustain innovation is a 3-part solution. One, we need effective leadership. We need to do what Dr. Wagenstein said, assume responsible leadership. But all leadership cannot be taught. Sometimes you need to have an experience in terms of gaining elements to be an effective leader, to teach you how to create a culture, how to identify talented people, and how to give them permission to innovate, like we saw in the Innovation Studio. I pondered the question, might there be a role for the American Surgical Association in this regard? And prior to sharing with you my thoughts, I went back and reread the last 4 presidential addresses, and I would encourage you to do the same. Dr. Ledgerwood challenged us, what happened to surgical leadership? Dr. Economou eloquently described the place of the research university in the future of surgical science, healthcare, and also collaborations with industry in his talk, Engines of Discovery and Innovation. Dr. Lilimo talked about surgical mentorship, a great tradition, but can we do better for the next generation? A moving talk. Followed by Dr. Ron Mayer talking about our calling, showing the opportunities with diversity and inclusion within our medical centers and within leadership in general within surgical academia. The American Surgical Association represents the leaders of American surgery, from division chief to department chair to dean to CEO of the health system to president of a university. The American Surgical Association has a track record of supporting young scientists, such as Dr. Chris Brewer. We have given $7 million to investigators since 1982, and they have been very successful. Is it time for the American Surgical Association to think of a way that we can engage in the leadership preparation of the future generation? I say yes. There are many, many leadership courses available. Very few of them offer experiential opportunities for the students or for the leaders that are aspiring to go on to greater responsibility. The AAMC Council of Deans offers such an opportunity through the Council of Deans Fellowship. Leaders that are aspiring for deanships can apply to that fellowship, and they spend time with a dean at various institutions in order to understand what the responsibilities are, and in order to understand what their gaps in their knowledge are, and if they close those gaps, would allow them to be a more effective leader. I took this to the council and received their permission to engage 4 collaborating groups, and these are the leaders of the 4 collaborating groups. We met last October. The Association of Women Surgeons, the Society of Asian Academic Surgeons, the Society of Black Academic Surgeons, and the Society of University Surgeons. Beginning with that meeting in October, we worked to come up with a proposal for an American Surgical Association Fellowship Grant, and submitted that to our council for their feedback, and then to their councils. And during the past several months, each of the councils of these collaborating organizations have approved the concept of an ASA Surgical Leaders Fellowship. And that was also approved by your council. And we'll have more details available for you at the business meeting. But going forward, we hope to promote an American Surgical Association Leaders Fellowship, Surgical Leaders Fellowship, to help the next generation of new leaders be better prepared. This award will allow each of these organizations to nominate and have a position for the fellowship. In the even years, the Association of Women Surgeons and the Society of Asian Academic Surgeons, and in the odd number of years, the Society of Black Academic Surgeons and the Society of University Surgeons. So we hope to build a pipeline of a diverse group of future leaders that we can share experiences with as an organization. They would reach out to members of this group to spend a day, a week with you, a couple times a year, to learn what the responsibilities are for the new generation of surgical leaders. In summary, innovation is critically important for us to advance surgical science, education, and patient care. But it requires leadership. And we, as the American Surgical Association, as the group of leaders of American surgery, I think that we have a responsibility to help prepare the next generation. Thank you very much. It's been a great honor and privilege to serve as your president this last year, and I hope I delivered a message that everyone can resonate with. Thank you very much.